and welcome. This is the conclusion of this series, which got us all started with Western Dressage 101. And thank you all so much for your enthusiasm and for participating. And this is all about, are you ready to show, and suggestions of how to get started. How do you figure it out? People are talking to us all the time. How do I figure it out? Am I ready? And here are the list of suggestions. Have a conversation with your coach, your riding instructor, your trainer. Those people really know you, and they're going to talk to you about all of these possibilities that we're going to talk about tonight. When you don't have a riding instructor or a trainer, you're kind of a self-trainer, or you're coming over for another division and you don't really have this all going on yet. You can talk to a judge, you can talk to a knowledgeable friend, you can talk to another competitor. Ideas of things to figure it out are to actually take a test, and for some of us, we're into dressage, we're into Western dressage, but there are people coming in from reining and from pleasure. And so they look at our tests and they say, well, it looks like a pattern. I ride patterns. Well, take out the pattern and try it out. It's clear that it needs to be easily doable at home. It's always more difficult when you get ready to try to compete. And even if it's an online competition, you'll find your nerves hit you. You'll find that doing it under pressure affects you, that going somewhere else and doing it with the horse is different. So, when in doubt, pick an easier test and pick a lower level. If you look at the basic test and you look at it and say, well, it kind of looks like training level dressage, and I'm kind of a dressage girl, I think I can do that. Okay, if you have a lot of experience in dressage and you're used to doing it all the time and it's no problem. But if not, maybe move down to intro 1 and 2, or, and get started with something easier. That's one thing about us here in WD that we haven't talked a lot about yet, and that is that we're such a new division that people kind of ride the first level the first year, and then they're like, well, I did that level, I guess I'll move up. And that's a thing. And in dressage work, and we do dressage work, we're Western dressage, but we use the dressage theories. The theories about training horses are that you're training the harder things while you're working on the basics. And if you're working on level 1, you should be competing basic or lower, because you don't want to be working on what you're trying to compete. That doesn't make you successful. So when in doubt, pick out lower tests. Go to a show, pay the schooling fee, and possibly don't compete. Most shows either allow you to come in and school, and you can pay a schooling fee to come and do that. Or if they don't allow that, then a lot of us say, yeah, I'm entering. And we enter a test with no intention of going in. Absolutely none. Joanne, I know Joanne Williams is out there. Joanne, are you there? Uh, Joanne, talk to us about some of those things. I know you have some plans sometimes about taking horses that you're getting show broke. Are you there and can jump in?
Yes, I am. I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thanks for joining
All
in.
right. So I was just smiling when you said that about entering a show with absolutely no intention of competing. And I have done that many times with young horses, green horses, and even riders who have never really been away from home. And we go the day before and we school, and everything's wonderful. And the next day it's 50 degrees and pouring rain. It's like, yeah, we're out of here. Goodbye. Have a nice show. See you next time. And the opposite is true. I've taken young horses or green students. The schooling has gone well. The next day's beautiful. We get on. Either the horse is terrible and the rider is a nervous wreck and we scratch, or they're wonderful and they do the test. It's You're already there. You paid the fees, enter the class, scratch it if things aren't good, ride
Good,
it if things are good. There's
great.
always another show down the road.
Right. But it pays to be pays to be prepared. And when you're trying to figure out if you even want to do this, it's kind of a way, to figure it out and even go as a spectator and watch a show and hang around and talk to people before you even make the commitment to go showing is possible too. And here's the
Yes.
last one, and you're a judge, videotape a test and pay a judge to judge it for you. Now, Joanne, you're a large art judge. You do this for people, don't you?
Oh, yes.
And it's
Uh,
relatively inexpensive. I mean, I don't charge much.
and
Do you charge? It's not too expensive, is it?
it's not, I'm sorry, the gas was a great big deer just ran in front of my car.
My goodness gracious. Be safe, Joanne.
I am. But yeah, we're so lucky to be able to do these things with the internet. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know of any judges that would refuse.
No, they're usually very kind unless they're busy, but there's plenty of us out here too, so you can always do that.
Mhm.
So
Well,
I have
thank
a question, Ida, about the sending in a test to pay and judge. Do you do that through WDAA or do you actually contact the judge themselves?
just contact the judge.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, you probably know some judges, or if you don't, you can, our names are on the USCF website, like they're listed there. Our telephone numbers, our mailing address, like nothing we have is personal because people got to get a hold of us. So it's available. But, even if you only know like Joanne's name, you Google Joanne and she comes right up. I do. Every judges come up, because we're trying to get hired, so we don't hide. And so you can just Google somebody and oh, I'm Facebook friends, or I can get to be Facebook friends, or I can send them a messenger. Like two people today contacted me that weren't friends, but they wanted to ask me about something. Would I do something for them? And they're on Messenger asking me, hey, can we get you to do this? Or, this kind of thing. You can messenger a judge on Facebook and say, hey, do you do this? Would you do this for me? I don't know one that doesn't. Everybody does this. And they have a fee, and mine isn't very high. And, most judges, it isn't a very high fee. And so they're willing to do it. And this is a way to get some feedback or put your toe in the water. If you don't want to go into an online show, even you can ask a judge to evaluate you. And, you might even be able to pay them a little bit more than just paying the fee for the test, judging the test, but you might pay them a bit more like a writing lesson, and have them consult with you. You could talk on the phone with them. You pay them for their time and say, okay, well, I was thinking about going in basic level test one. Does it look like I got my act together? Or am I okay? Do you think I can go in this level? What are my challenges before I go in? Judges are great. They'll help you. It's really cool.
Yeah, Kristen here says she's sent tests to you for 6 months in 2022 and that she had great sessions and she learned a lot. So that's awesome.
Oh, that's good. It's really funny when you send a test to a judge for this kind of judging, they put the numbers down and they make the comments, but then usually besides that, because like with Kristen, we would make a telephone appointment and go over it together. Well, then comes all the comments, well, more like coaching comments for her, like make a suggestion, and I'm sure I told her things like, well, if you need to practice your center line and nobody's there, I want you to um, drag the line between A and C with a rake, so that you can see yourself. And here, I want you to look at this video of how to make a more elegant, more correct salute, more visible salute for the judge, and all these kind of things. So when you pay them the extra fee to actually help you more than just judge the test, because judging a test is relatively inexpensive. It doesn't take them too long. But if they take the time to teach you something, then you're paying them a teaching fee, but still very reasonable. And oh, you can learn a lot. And Kristen and I, that was how we got started. Was she was um, wanting to have a judge review her test so that she would begin to have more idea of what her scores would be like when she went in the ring, and also a judge's perspective of where the holes in the tests were, which is different from, there's lots of really good trainers out there, but sometimes trainers are judges or have a really good eye because they compete themselves and really understand how we view things. But sometimes they, just miss details that judges see. So that's why people send tests to judges for those details. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining in. That was great. I know Janice Mumford is out there, and I wanted to ask Janet about this slide because Janice and I were having this great conversation the other day about how people can figure out when they should move up. And, kind of chime in with us about this. And I know Joanne's there too, and she hasn't left, but Janice, talk to me about this. How do you feel about this slide?
I feel this is pretty accurate. A lot of people are in too much of a hurry to move up the levels when they should be paying attention to the details, because that's what we judge is the details. Did you come down I know you halted when you came down the center line, but was your center line straight? A lot of people mess up the center line. That's like a non-brilliant movement where you can get a huge score if you pay attention to the details. So instead of being in a hurry moving up, why don't you look at your test? Look at a lot of people on the EB 20-meter circle. They make the first half big, the second half small. It's those details that are keeping you from getting that 70. Are you riding too deep in the corner with your gated horse? Are you riding corners when you're supposed to be riding a circle at A or C? We all sometimes miss thinking about the big picture and are so busy trying to move up the levels when we just always need to go back to the basics. One can't drill the basics enough. And also, by taking your time and working on the basics, you're not stressing your horse out or yourself. And you're actually making your transitions easier if you're working on first level. Your basic level transitions are so much easier because you're working on a level above. There we go.
That's very, very good points. Yes, we want, one thing we don't think about too much, but we talked about last time because we talked last month about judges jargon and about the numbers in the comments. And when we looked at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and we get to 6 and it says satisfactory. And then I had in parentheses, C like, if at the low levels, particularly level 1 and down, your test is very 6, 6, 5, 6, 6, 5. 7 is fairly good. 6 is satisfactory. C-ish. You have something going wrong on one of the spokes of the training reel is kind of wobbling if you're in basic first level intro and you kind of 6, 6, 5, 6, 6, 5. And at those levels, because there aren't big skill movements like shoulder in, because you can have your horse on the bit and be forward and have the horse uphill and in cadence engaged in shoulder in. And if you miss the 3 tracks and the bend, you can get a 4. So that's a skill movement, and you messed up the skill and had a 4. But in these lower levels, it's not so skill orientated. It's orientated more about, is the horse actively working forward? Is it moving forward? Is it showing clear impulsion, continuous impulsion? We talked about this before. Is it in connection? Is it in the balance it's supposed to be? And is it accepting the aids well? If those three things are going on, especially in intro and basic, then you just have the walk and jog in intro and the walk and jog and lope in basic, and these big figures, just the halts and 20-meter circles and diagonals. So there's no big skills there. And if you are getting 665, then you have a problem with connection, or the horse isn't active enough, or it's not obedient or relaxed enough to do what you want it to do. So you've got to address those problems. So that's why this level, in those levels, you want to be 70-ish, and in level 2, you want to be regularly near 67 and up. Joanne, you ride at level 5, and you've ridden horses all the way up, every single level we have, and you're one of our most experienced competitors. Can you talk to us about how you feel about what the difficulty is once you get above like level 4? It's harder to be closer to 70s. But can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the old saying is the higher up the levels you go, the more ways there are to get a 4.
Yeah.
And that leads back to what you and Janice have both said, that you spend 90% of your time schooling. If you know how to ride the movements, your basics are everything. So what did I do with my level 5 horse today? We did halts, and we did simple transitions on the 20-meter circle.
And that
so
keeps
keeping the basics solid are going to allow you to comfortably move up and keep your horse solid in all the principles that we want to get those higher scores. Because you can creep sideways in a half pass or a facsimile of, you're not going to get a high score because you've lost the impulsion, you've lost the elasticity. I'm not sure what else to say other than there are so many more things being judged. The higher you go up the levels, the less you can get a pass on any of those aspects of the training wheel being faulty or missing.
Yes. And on top of every component of the wheel has to be met, which, rhythm, relaxation,
yes,
connection, impulsion, straightness, and then collection. Okay, so every component has to be met. And on top of that, then in these levels from 2 to 5, are these increasing? You have to meet all of that while you do a skill like shoulder in, like half pass. Even things like, side pass may not be a forward movement, but it has requirements like the pull, lateral pull flexion, and the legs crossing, and the horse in balance has to be parallel, and the legs crossing in front, and it goes on what the requirements of the movement are, so you could be meeting the goals of the training wheel, but you could be having skill problems with your riding or the horse, which is affecting, again, the opportunity to fail, as you were talking about. So yes, great. That's a great point. By the way, beautiful horse here. That's Joanne on, that's Sandia? Do I have that right, Joanne? I'm sorry.
Yes.
The pretty gray with your blue shirt. And this
that is Sandia.
That's Sandia, beautiful photograph of her. just in a gorgeous, gorgeous frame for, you know, somewhere in the basic and level one. Beautiful, beautiful connection. And here's Tamara Steinbrecher, our outgoing president, in a beautiful on timber pivot. But boy, nice pictures. This is only sitting here to just reiterate and reiterate and reiterate that one really big score, like this 74 down here, it doesn't cut it. You have got to reliably have your scores between 67 and 70. So you've got to have a bunch of scores in order to be able to move up. One score from one judge, you get 171, and all the rest of your scores are 63s, 64s. That's probably not a good thing. Maybe on that day, you had a great day, or on that day, somehow that judge looked at your horse and went, wow, that all looks smooth. It looks all together. You guys pulled it all off. But on the other days, the judges didn't. The other part that's circled here is in yellow, and that is that these are licensed judges. Well, all of these happen to be large R's, but this was in level 5, so that's why they're large R's. But one of the things you're looking for from your evaluation is a lot of us don't have live shows. And so some of our first shows that we're going to are being produced by the local GMOs, the dressage clubs. And then unfortunately, there'll be an L dressage judge, which we need to be informed and educated that an L is not licensed. That's not a licensed judge. They are not licensed by USEF. That's learner. L stands for learner. That's an apprentice judge. They have been through a training program. They've been through the L program, and they've either passed with distinction, which means that they passed with a high enough score, 85%, to be considered to possibly, at least they have qualified high enough if they want to consider, and if they have the means and the skills to become licensed. Or they may have passed without distinction, which they passed the program with a passing grade, but they're not qualified to go on to even apply for licensing. They would have to take the tests again. So these are learner judges. And unfortunately for us, they have wonderful dressage background, and they do have training in how to judge dressage tests. So that part's good. What they don't know is our specific rules. They don't know our Western movements, and they don't always know all of our culture, that our focus is on writability, our focus is on harmony. So I'm not saying that you can't get a good evaluation for an L judge. There are some wonderful ones out there. They're fine, and they're lovely people, and they're trying hard, and some of them have taken the time to educate themselves, but a lot of them have not. So when you're shopping around for competitions, start looking for licensed judges and see if those are the people that are going to be evaluating you, because it will make a difference to you when you start learning, and you'll appreciate that. All right, so when you start looking for shows, this is a picture, a screenshot of WDA Association, the homepage. And right here's the calendar. So we got the little red dot here. So of all the little buttons, push the calendar button. Here comes the drop down menu. WDAA live recognized shows. So live recognized is that it's WDAA recognized and USCF recognized. And this is WDAA online recognized shows. So these online recognized shows, what that means is they have been given a WDAA number. And for any of you that are new to us, there is, WDAA does have a lifetime points award for the horses. If you participate, you register your horse, and you pay and have them tally your results as you go along, and horses accumulate points, and you know, they get a halter, and then they get a belt buckle in it, and they move up through the levels and get more recognition. And it's called Wheelpath, WHL. I think it's course, lifetime awards. But anyway, WILPAP is what the anachronism is that we call it or whatever. So that's what you're looking at here. Now, the next one is I punched on the button that said online recognized shows. And there's a calendar, and you just scroll down through the calendar. And these are all the shows. And so this one right here, I'm real familiar with this DSO. This is Dressage Show Online. So that just happens to be the first one there. They hire people like me. They hire Joanne. They hire people like, Cindy Butler and Janice Mumford and, all these people, all of us judges, like they hire people like us. They are hiring recognized judges. And this number right here, it tells you that this is a recognized WDAA number. So you just scroll down through all these and you find a show. And so this one says that it's February 16th through February 25. So it's running through that time period. And you just punch on these and then you get to their website and it begins with, what you need to send to them and how do you pay. And they probably have PayPal or Venmo, or you can send a check, or, their websites will tell you what you're going to do to enter. Usually pretty simple and pretty straightforward. Well, we've all been here. But here's just a tentative list, because some of you are very experienced, and these are just the tentative lists of all the things that you need to think about if you're going to a live show. You need to find the show, of course, like we just saw, and send your entries early so that the show doesn't fill up, because this isn't like an open horse show, like a ring show where you can just take more and more and more and more horses. After a while, there's no more hours in the day. And dressage style shows, Western dressage shows, can eventually hit a limit where the ring and the judge can no longer judge more than so many hours a day. So if you want to get in and you think you want to go, you send your entries early. And live shows, check your equipment, check your trailer, check your truck, check your lug nuts. Well, be sure your horse loads. How many people, I can't tell you that, they haven't loaded their horse in 2 or 3 years and they decide they're going to go to a show, and then, they wash it the day before, they pack all the trailer and everything, but they don't actually practice loading. And then they're shocked when the horse doesn't get on the morning of the show. If you don't know if your horse is show broke, or you don't know how your horse is going to act in a strange environment, we were just talking to Joanne about that. Make an opportunity to haul your horse somewhere. Take it to your friend's arena. Take it to somebody else's arena. Call up somebody across town and say, can I come over and rent your arena for an hour? Can you go to a show and pay a fee and maybe show and maybe not? But find out how your horse is away from home. Hey, Joanne knows all about this, because, all of us have at one time or another had AAA and figured out when we call them, whoa, you got a horse trailer? They don't come. They don't do anything for you because you got a trailer on. So we all have US Rider. And if you haven't heard of US Rider hauling insurance was invented. The person who started it was a horse person. They still are. And the first thing they ask you is, do you have your trailer? And how many horses are there? And are you okay? And do you need anything? And do you need a vet? Like, they will help you with road services. Joanne, I was hoping you would tell the folks about how long your driver stayed with you when you were on the way to the Worlds, and how careful he was about keeping your horse in the shade and all that kind of thing. Because it was amazing to me when you told me the story about the driver he didn't just drop you off to get your truck fixed. He stayed with you until he was sure. I don't know if you can hear me.
I think I'm on.
Yes, you are.
Okay. The whole process, as horrible as it was absolutely wonderful. The woman I talked to at US Rider, which was I'm not sure which I called first, my husband or US Rider. Don't remember. but she talked me through the entire process. She found a wrecker where my truck could be put on the flatbed and my trailer could be hooked to the back of the wrecker. I rode with the tow truck driver. He was very careful, taking the corners, making sure that my horse wasn't going to be unsettled. She also, the agent at US Rider, advised me to immediately get off the phone and call 911 so that I would have an officer behind me moving traffic to the other lane. And she stayed on the phone with me for 25 minutes until the gentleman with the wrecker was there and setting everything up. And what he did is he made phone call after phone call to try to find someplace that had the right parts to repair the truck. And we ended up at a huge Chevy dealership. And US Rider called me 3 more times to make sure everything was okay. So 1000% recommend that if you're going to haul more than 10 minutes away from home, buy the insurance from US Rider and get a trailer cam. Because I sat in the wrecker watching my horse on my trailer cam.
That's good. That's very good advice. And this service is amazing, that they will help you. They'll help you with whatever is going on with your horse, get you to other farms, wait with you. They're the best. I've never seen anything like it because they're right on the ball about. Even one of my friends said that alone she had 2 horses in the trailer and a dog on the way to a competition. And the same thing, they needed something to haul. They put her truck on a flatbed and pulled the trailer behind. And the driver came with bottles of water for the horses. He had gallons of water in his truck when he arrived because he wasn't sure. It was very hot and he wasn't sure she had water with her and he was terrified about the horses. And the first thing he did was, "Can I water your dog? Has your dog had a drink?" Like, wow. So yeah, it's great. But people, if you have US Rider, you've heard of it. If you haven't, you need it. So it's a great, the fact that it was horse people that started it, they totally understand what our problems are. So it's a great service when you need it. We don't ever want to have trouble on the way to or from or with our horses in the trailer. But if you do, you want them to help you. They're amazing. So, make lists and haul away from home and practice your tests and make lists. And your lists are going to be things like, having lists of your clothes, lists of the equipment. Here's a list of my papers that I have to have with me. I liked Tamara Steinbrecher was telling me the other day that her thing about her papers is that she has hard copies of all of her horse's papers, which is great. She has them in a notebook in the truck. That's great. But she has a contact on her phone, and every horse is in the contact section with his name, all of his numbers, his chip number, his identification, a picture of him, the number of his accession number on his Coggins, a photograph of his papers, a photograph of his Coggins in her phone. So when she gets to a show, if the notebook has been lost or anything is missing, in the phone is all this information, which is a great idea. So that is super cool. Do things like make sure your clothes fit. I know this sounds ridiculous. I can't tell you how many times I've been at a competition and people come out of their trailer in tears that they put on 10 pounds over the winter and the jacket doesn't button anymore. And they want to know, is whatever they are wearing legal, or do I have an extra coat? And I'm like, here's an extra coat. I always have extra clothes. I have extra tack. I've loaned out so much stuff I can't tell you, but it's oh, or it's still in the dry cleaning bag and the dry cleaners shrunk it, lost a button or whatever, and it just came from the dry cleaners. They think it's fine. They didn't inspect it. It fit 2 weeks ago when they left it off at the dry cleaners, and they didn't put on weight, but something's wrong with the coat and they didn't inspect it or check it. It just came out of the dry cleaners bag and whoops, something's missing. So check your stuff. It's important. Be sure that you check that the tack and the clothing is legal. And let me tell you, getting on the social corral or getting on WDAA for amateurs or whatever that's not the place to check if something's legal. Because all the people out there, they're not a steward and they're not a WDAA steward, and they're not from WDAA, the office, or a WDAA steward. So asking your buddies on Facebook isn't the way to go, believe me. What you want to do is, if you don't know if something's legal, you take really good photographs of it, tight photographs. Get really good ones, front and back. Send an email to Diney, the executive director, at the office and say, can you get a steward to assure me about this? Is this legal? Then you have it in writing. And if it can take time if for some reason you have a piece of equipment which is controversial. And that may be why you're asking, because you can't find it in the rule book and you can't find a picture in it because it's just been manufactured by a manufacturer, or it is outside the parameters of the descriptions of the rule book. And if you don't hear back soon, because you'll hear back soon if it's legal, because those are easy. It's the ones that aren't legal or are questionable that take time, and they have to research that. They want to tell you correctly what is the right thing. That does have to go out to stewards, and that takes time. So if you're in a hurry, do this early in the season. Or the other thing is, if you don't hear back, then you need to get on to something that you for sure know is legal, because what you're asking them, if it's taking a lot of time, it's probably not legal or it is controversial. And here's the next part. There are things which are legal, but every single time you present them to 4 stewards, 3 like it and 1 doesn't. If you've got one of those pieces of tack, if you absolutely don't need to use it, don't use it. Because what's going to happen is everyone by the steward and then go around about whether this thing is legal or not. And I don't know about you, but I don't want that kind of stress. So my deal is every single thing that I have is legal. It could in no way be questionable. And that's what I want my students to have too, because I also don't want a judge sitting there trying to judge and then they're all stressed out looking at something like, oh my goodness, is that bit legal? Well, I want them to be paying attention to whether I made the corner well, I made the circle well. I don't want the whole 4 minutes that I ride my intro test, them worrying about, is that bit legal? I'm going to have to stop her or call the steward at the end of her test. That's very distracting for that judge. Joanne, are you still there? Or Janice? How do you feel about that? Do you feel the same way? Like, I hate that. That's stressful if I'm sitting there fussing about whether something's legal.
Yes, and also when they do get a ruling from USEF/WDAA, they need to print that out and bring it with them to the shows. But I would not want anything that's questionable, because you have enough going on at a horse show that you don't need to deal with tack issues.
Yes, yes, I agree. That's perfect. Yes, then the idea of printing it out, perfect, Janice. Yes, bring it with you.
Yes,
Remember,
I absolutely agree too.
Joanne,
There's
thank you.
both judging and riding. You don't need that extra stress.
No, and you just want to make it easy on yourself. So if you're arriving to live shows, come early, set a schedule for yourself, try to stay on schedule. And these are just some ideas, and you know, there's lots more on this list. Now, thinking about online, you know, people don't realize that sending your entries early is still an important part of entering. And studying the taping requirements, every organization now on WDAA, there are some guidelines, and on the LMS, the Learning Management System, I think there's a little how-to about taping, and almost every show organizer has either a little written blurb on what they need or a little suggested video, watch this video. Keep in mind that Zooming is necessary. You cannot see any details judging when someone doesn't zoom at all. And if someone doesn't zoom and there's a little tiny horse way up there at the end of the screen, if you look at your own test and you can't see things like your legs are blending into the brown horse and you wore black trousers, and you can't see your arms and your hands, and you can't see the reins, you can't see the contact. If you look at your own tape and you can't see any details, I'm not Superwoman. My eyes aren't any better than yours, and I'm probably older than most of you. So I can't see it either. And we are duty bound to not guess. And what happens is we have to write on your test, no video detail. That means you didn't zoom, or no zoom. And we cannot give a 7. We can't give a 7 to anything that you can't see details, because I don't know that it's fairly good, because I can't see if you're pulling, I can't see if you're kicking, your legs disappeared on a black horse and you're in profile, and you got sun behind you, and I can't. And it may be less. You know, if I really can't see anything, sometimes I can see less than a fourth of the movement because of light problems and whatever. So you can be down to insufficient on that mark because I can't see it. So the marking is affected by the taping. And so you need to use Zoom, and you got to pay attention. Silly things like having the camera lens clean. You can't imagine how many people use their phone all day long, got greasy fingers, and there's smears all over the phones. Here's another thing. Most of us don't have our phones set to the highest resolution because we have so much stuff stored on our phones that we don't have much storage left. That's not a good phone for you to be taping on, or you better clear out your phone, because we need these set at the absolute highest resolution for competitive videotapes. So don't be stingy and set it at a low resolution and then send your tape into the, you know, hoping to get a 70, 75, because you're not going to. Try to clear out your phone, have enough storage, and set your phones to high resolution. Even if after you tape, you go back and you set it down for your everyday work. Your batteries have got to be full, and I should have put here, you probably need a battery pack, because this really drains cameras, and it drains them fast. So the next problem with the batteries is if it's under 50 or over 80, the batteries are either too hot or too cold and are badly affected, really adversely affected. So A, you probably need your battery full. B, you need the battery pack. You may need to plug it in. Think about put hand warmers on it if it's cold with an elastic, or get a little tiny umbrella to put up over your camera to keep it from overheating, keep it out of the sun until you're ready to tape, because these things can really affect this. Remember to rotate the arena letters slightly towards the camera, towards C, usually rotating them about 35, 40 degrees. You guys don't need to see the letters. The judge does. When you have these kind of letters, then I can see them. But most of us are using road cones, and most people put the road cone, they put the letter towards them. I need it turned towards the judge, so turn it towards the camera. it really pays to do some practice runs and to actually tape those and practice zooming. Or if you don't have a person doing it for you and you're using your Pivo, you need to practice to see that the Pivo is going to follow you. It doesn't get hung up on anything, that you do have enough zoom where you've set your camera, but do one at some point. Check the angle of the sun. Remember that if your only time to tape is when you get home in the afternoon after work, and it's going to be 6 o'clock at night, and unfortunately your arena faces towards the west, your camera could possibly be right facing into the sun. So think about the time of day that you think you'll be taping, and think about the angle of the sun and see if you're going to be okay. That's why this practice is going to be a deal for you to see how this is going to go. Same thing, check your tack, check your clothing, check that it's legal, be sure your clothes fit. Anything that hangs down, flaps around, the leather latigos that people used to tie their packs onto their back of the saddles, take that stuff off for Western dressage. I'm not thinking you're gonna need a bedroll, because that stuff is distracting and it's tricky for judges. Give us some help. We don't want to be distracted by stuff. One of the things I dislike is, it's nice to have a neckerchief. A lot of people want to have a little scarf on. They want to be really into the Western thing. And of course, the quarter horse people are really into having this. But the ones that wear great big ones, and then they're loping and the thing is flying and it's flying. And I'm like, you have no idea. Distracting, annoying, like nothing flying around, nothing flipping around. Get all that stuff off, get it tucked in, get a knot tied in it, get a pin in it. You don't want any of that stuff flying around. Look neat and tidy. Decide on the best time of day that's going to work for you, the horse, the other people. Figure that out. Remember that when you're in an online competition, every online competition requires you to have a sign. They're going to tell you in your entries what that sign is, but like we just noticed, whatever organization it is, like let's say it's Spotlight Dressage, they'll have their sign that you can pre-print out, and it say Spotlight Dressage, blah, blah, blah show. It'll have the name of the show. It'll have the WDA number. It might have your horse's name and number. It probably has the level of the test. But what is that sign there for? It's because WDAA has rules that you're only to use this video once in a competition. That's your ride for this competition, and it cannot be entered into any other competition online. Fair's fair. So it's like a live show. You have a one-shot deal. So that sign has to be in the front of your video with no cuts to show that this is your ride for that competition. Don't forget at the end of your ride to walk forward and do your tack check. Crazy things. You have to get down to drop the bridle. Do not be sitting there and have the husband or somebody come up and drop the bridle. We all freak out. That's unsafe. And then they get after you about whether they're going to eliminate you or not. You're supposed to get down. So walk up, do the turn around, show all the sides of the horse, get down, drop the bridle. We need a close up, and I mean a close up, like close, like close up, like that. I need a close up of your bit, and I need both sides of it. And I need close-ups of the cavesson. If you have one, the inside of it, you have to flex your bosal. I need to see the sides of the horse to see if your spurs made any marks. I need close-ups of your spurs. So take a long time with your tack check and do a good job with it. And then when you're finished, you've done a good job. And you don't want to have a good ride and then have your ride not count in the horse show because you didn't do a legal tack check. Because if you leave out parts of the tack check, you're eliminated. So pay attention to the tack check and figure out what the requirements are, and be sure that you have you get your horse and the camera and the bits and everything right up close to that camera so I can see it in close up. Look at your video after you film it. And if you can't see the details, make another one because I can't see them either. And you'd rather have me really see what you're doing. And you know, you need to think about this because this is how we look at it as judges. I will not give you a 7 if you're way up there and I can't see anything because to me, you didn't zoom because you're hiding it. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but that's how we look at it. Somebody else dared to zoom and then they make some little mistakes. They have some warts. Maybe they bounced their hands a little bit and their horse was a little unsteady in the connection. And so maybe they would have got a 7, but I can see that they bounced their hands and their horse became unsteady and I had to give him a 6.5 because I'm sorry, he came out of connection a little bit. I can respect that because you were honest enough to show me your warts, which is what we're all supposed to be doing. But the people that go up there don't use any zoom and they're hiding in it. And you can't tell if the horse is steady or not, or if they bounce their hands around or not, then you have to assume they're hiding something. So I can't give them big scores because that isn't fair to the person who did show me. That's not fair. So think about fairness and do a good job with this taping because taping affects online competitions. It does. It's really important. So here's another problem that people have fallen into and didn't think about. You know, you have to upload this to YouTube. And so many people have left it until the last minute, and maybe they're in the last 24 hours, and oh my gosh, the Wi-Fi goes crazy, the network isn't working, the computer crashes, whatever. And they're just flipping out like, oh no, I'm not going to get into the international. I couldn't get my video up. As soon as you decide that you've got your video done, you review it, you think you've got your tech, look at your tag check, look at your video, be sure your sign is good. They have to be able to read your sign, which means you have to hold your sign up. Look how close stuff has to be for you to get a close-up of it. Your sign has to be so close, and you have to hold it 5 seconds. I have to be able to read it, not just wave it in front of me. And then I have to see the tag check, so check that. If you think, and don't forget, the horse cannot leave the video for a second. You can't forget to follow somebody in the corner and the horse goes out of the video and back into it. That's an illegal video. That'll get kicked out too. That's elimination. So you decide that your video is legal. You load it up to YouTube. Load it up as soon as you can. So load it up soon and get the link handy. And if you make up your mind that that's the one you're going to send it in, send it in. Why? Because those people need time to process your entries. Don't make them do it all at midnight on the last night. That's mean. You know, if you know that's the one you're sending, send it. Sometimes we have a situation where the judges are allowed to, if the classes get complete, they can begin the judging so that you get your stuff back faster. I'm sure you'd like to have your details sooner. So help out everybody by uploading soon and getting your entry process completed early. And then you can be sitting back going, wow, got that all done. Yeah, love it.
And I had some good comments in the chat, Ida.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so Joanne mentioned sending online entries early gives you more days to video, especially important if you need to ride outdoors. And that's absolutely true. Because I do the same thing. As soon as it opens, I enter, because as soon as you enter, you get the signs that you need to ride. So it gives you a couple extra days to get that done. So that's really great advice. And then Janice says, review your video and compare with the written test. Make sure you didn't omit a movement. And that's a great one too, because I have Brendan film mine. And so I memorize my tests and I'm always worried that I missed a movement. But then he's able to zoom, so.
Yes, and people have actually turned in tests even to really big shows where there was actually a movement missing. It's really easy to leave out like a 10-meter circle because just omitting the circle if you just omit the circle, you're still going in the right direction. So you don't realize that you're off course. And this actually happens. And if that happens, if you leave out a movement, you get an error uh, because you messed up the pattern. So you get an error, plus you get a 0 for that movement because you just didn't do it. So yes, that's perfect advice. Good advice, ladies. We're doing well. Okay, this is my big thing. If you're on time, you're late. I know military people talk about this, but my great grandmother was Ida. That's who I was named for. And this was her thing. If you're on time, you're late. And that's true in dressage and Western dressage. Because if you think about it, in live shows, if you're supposed to ride at 10 o'clock, you need to be entering the ring at 10 o'clock. And they're ringing the bell for you to be entering at 10 or just before 10 if you're present at the ring. And they need to have you entering the ring at 10 o'clock if your ride time is 10. So you have to remember always, always, always that you have to be at the ring waiting while the rider before you is saluting so that you can begin to quietly go around the ring as they are quietly exiting. And that at any moment in a Western dressage show, you're thinking that you're on time, but you're late because it's all based on time. And if you hold up the show, it affects your performance. But remember, you're being unkind to all the competitors behind you, because if you make the ring go late, then all those competitors who were planning their warm up and planned their whole day around their ride time, you have affected them negatively also. So be kind and be early. It's the same thing for online. We were just talking about load your videos early, and enter early and send things before your deadline. The earlier, the better, in case you're worried about video rejection, particularly on shows like the Online International. We're all trying to get entered, get the sign, so we have more days to make the video. But most of us aren't holding our videos. If we get to a point where, okay, that's the one I'm sending, we're sending it because those videos have to be reviewed. And if they decide that they don't like our tack check or whatever, they pop that back to us. Well, if the show is still open for a week, you have a week to make another video. But if you're on the last day, you may not have time to try to retape a test. So as Joanne and Janice were saying, the earlier, the better. So decide upon your tests, which tests you want to enter. Practice your tests. Now, practicing tests is always kind of controversial. I have so many trainers say to me, oh, you can't practice the test. You can't practice the test. The horses learn the test. Well, I don't know. My whole entire lifetime, I have practiced my whole entire tests on every horse I have ever shown, ever. So my experience has been rather different, I guess, from all these trainers. But one thing I do know is that to mix it up, a lot of us, we ride the test backwards. We only ride parts of the tests every day. We don't always ride the whole test. But it is really important at some point to practice the entire test all together in its entirety on the horse and see how that goes. But you can practice every day, and you can practice segments of the test. You can ride the test backwards. What's your favorite way to handle that, Joanne? You ride all this stuff all the time.
I usually practice just parts of the test. When I do a lot of online shows because I want to show for a variety of judges and get their input. So I do practice the test, but I'm being videoed for submission to a show. I also never do the walk to lope transition where it belongs. I'll do everything else in the test where it belongs, except that.
Oh, they anticipate that badly,
Oh,
don't they? That's a tough
my
one.
horses are so much smarter than I am.
I don't think it's you. I think we all have that problem, especially the level 5 tests are all
Hmm.
walk to lope. They don't offer us any options. And if you get your horse into level 5, um, you just don't have any options. They're not writing any tests that are jog lope anymore. And so the horses, once they're walking, they're like, lope's neck, lope, lope, lope. It's gonna be lope. I know it. Stop
Oh,
it.
yes.
It's
Yes.
just
So I
really
practice segments. Can I string together 5 movements? And then I might take a longer walk than is written in the test.
good. Good advice. Memorizing the tests and practicing with readers, this is all up to you. Each and every person has their own thing about this. There's no discrimination if you have a reader. I will say this though, you can no nobody likes a reader that barks like a military sergeant, and they're really annoying to judges. And their judges are trying to concentrate, and when readers read too loud so that every ring everywhere or clear over to the secretary's booth, they can hear the reader needs to be loud enough for the rider. The judge will sort of hear them, but I don't really even have to hear them particularly. And this business of everybody in the whole showgrounds has to hear your reader. No, practice with your readers, get enough volume that you need, and utilize it. But take the time to say to your reader, I appreciate that you read for me, but I don't want you reading like that. It annoys the judges, and they've told us so. So memorize your tests if you like. If that works for you, there's lots of ways to learn to memorize your tests. Keep in mind with a reader that the reader cannot talk to you. If you are using a reader and something goes wrong and the judge rings the bell, the reader mustn't talk to you. The judge is responsible for setting you on the right course. The reader can mess you up by talking to you. If they talk to you about anything, it's unauthorized assistance. So when something goes wrong, go to the judge, and the judge will straighten you out, and the judge will tell the reader where to start reading again. But don't have conversations with the reader. Don't talk with the reader or the coach before you exit the ring. That can be construed as unauthorized assistance, technically, until you actually exit the door, the ring. You're still under the control of the judge, so no chitter chattering about how your ride went. Develop a warm up for your competition. Most people, 20 or 25 minutes is a lot of warm up for a horse, unless they're way up in levels like level 5 or in Grand Prix, those kind of levels. But 20 or 25 minutes for most horses is plenty. And for some horses, like baby horses, 4-year-old horses, I used to lunge my 4-year-old horses. I lunged them 10 minutes in warm up. I was on them 7 minutes and I went in, because baby horses are tired and their attention spans are about as long as a gnat. So pay attention that you're not overriding young horses, and that you have enough warm up to get your schooled horse, like this is a level 2, 3 horse, ready. Um, and your warm up may be 20 or 25 minutes, but the time that you're actually around the ring and getting there is longer. Remember that you need to have an alternate plan. I can't tell you how many times I have gotten to horse shows where the warm up was too full, the warm up was rocky. I have actually warmed up in the parking lots at Morgan Dressage show before, because the parking lot where we were parking the trailers was grass, and where I was supposed to ride my dressage horse was all pretty rocky. And I warmed up in the parking lot between the trailers. So have an alternate plan. Be sure you can ride your horse somewhere else. Also, one time I had a Morgan mare, and there were several stallions in the warm up. I couldn't go in that warm up with that mare. She was going to come right into heat and not pay attention, and the stallions were screaming like crazy, and I couldn't go in. And I walked and I trotted and I walked and I trotted. I took 2 canter departs and I went in training level, and the mare won the class with a 71%. So you have to have an alternate plan and, be prepared because you never know what's going to happen. Of course, get to the ring early and practice riding with others. Most of us are in our rings alone, and warm up is tricky. And the thing about practicing with the others is not only the horses, but remember, everyone keep right, call rail if you need it, and be polite. If you're not used to having a schedule, most of us do this, and this is how a schedule goes for a live competition. This just happens to be the way I do mine. If my ride time is at 10:55, then I start at the top of the paper 10:55, and then 5 minutes before my ride time, I have to be at the in gate walking, on the bed in connection. And as soon as the competitor around the ring is saluting, I'm starting a round. So 5 minutes before I'm going to be ready to go, which means at 10:45, I'm going to stop my warm up, wipe my horse down, check my clothing. I take a horse, I check my test. And my warm up was 20 minutes and is always, even at very high levels, I only work on the movements that I need for that level, and I focus on the basics. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, that I to the warm up, or as I come into the warm up, check with your ring steward and check in with them. Be sure they're checked off. Ask if there's any breaks or any scratches before your ride so that you're prepared. And I always ask, which competitor is ahead of me? What's their number? Or they'll say, oh, it's that bay over there. Okay, well, I'm wide the ring early, but this is a live. I tack my horse, and you cannot show without a number, and you can be eliminated if you go in the ring without your number. So you have to have a number on. That's really important. 9:15, drink some water, eat myself 30 minutes to get dressed, have a snack. And when I go and I look at the ring and make sure that I see that ring 2 is, they'll have a number on the ring, and I check my test and I check that the reader has the correct test. So if you've never had a schedule before, this is just, some people make their schedule just a little bit different, but most people's is very similar to this. And I just wrote it all down so that you would have a sample of what this looks like. Usually most people's experienced competitors, this is very similar to what they do. For an online competition, it's about the same kind of thing, but remember, when you start, you need to hold up the entry sign, and it has to be 5 or 6 seconds, and it has to be steady and easily read. And remember that when you begin the ride, keep the camera rolling all through the ride and all through the tack check, because you can't have any cuts in your video or you're eliminated. 5 minutes before that, I stop before I'm going to start my ride, and I just check to see that, like, for example, sometimes I'm warming my horse up in scoop boots. Those aren't legal, so I have to remember to get down, take them off, get myself reorganized, and then get back up in connection. So I wipe her down, I get all cleaned up at 10:40. When I see that the settings are correct, that the tracking's working, and review with the camera person, if you have one, that you're going to do the tack check, they're not to talk to you, that they're going to zoom, the whole thing. Here's your 20 minutes warm up. Have a plan for impulsion, connection, and that the horse is loose and relaxed. Focus on your basics and only do the movements that you need specific to this test, to the test you're going to do today. Don't do any extra stuff that you don't have to do, unless you need those for suppling exercises. Otherwise, avoid other test movements, because you get confused and you get in there, you go, oh, I just did that. Is that part of this test? And your pivo are all set up, that your camera person's ready. And, amazingly enough, you still need to go to the ring bag. Like when I go to tack up my horse, I get my horse tacked up, and, I make sure that I got all my legal clothing on, but I also take fly spray and a drink with me, even when I'm going to my ring for my online show, because, fly spray, you get out of the barn and you're like, oh no, now I have to go all the way back to the barn to get fly spray. And I'm on my online showing, and I just don't want to be hassled with all that stuff. So take all that stuff with you. you know, well before you tack up the horse and you see, I leave quite a while to do all this. I drink some water, I have a snack. I think it's okay that the phone is on airplane mode, that you're not going to be disturbed with somebody calling while you're trying to tape on your phone, that your phone is fully charged, you have your battery pack, and that the reader has the correct test. So similar things, but it all matters when you're getting ready to go showing. The 10 things that require zero talent, this is always on my list at the first of the year because I'm thinking about it. And when we go showing, being on time, work ethic, effort, body language, energy, attitude, passion, being coachable, doing extra, and being prepared. These 10 things don't require any talent. And these 10 things for sure will make you successful. And so I keep this on my desk and I keep it posted up when I go with competitors to shows. I keep this around on a little poster for them to look at and to remind me that these are the things which make us successful. And they don't require skill, they just require attitude and effort. So we're at the end of our presentation for today. So have some fun and enjoy the journey. Any comments, ladies, or do we have any more comments from our chat, Dana?
I don't see any more comments in the chat.
Janice and Joanne joining in. I'm always glad to have other judges to help educate us and to join in. So thank you so much. This is the end of our presentation for the Georgia group, and I thank you for the honor of being asked to do this, and I thank you all for helping. And Dana has been amazing. She is an integral part of this. So thank you, Dana.
Oh,
And
thank you.
thank you to everyone who has participated. This will be on the Georgia Affiliates website attached shortly, and it will also be in my own personal YouTube channel so that you may share it out with your friends and with other organizations as a set of educational tools. So if there are no more comments, anyone else? Thank you for this evening. We were so pleased to do this series and so honored to be asked, and I hope it has been helpful. It certainly has been fun for me, and I have enjoyed interacting with all of you. Thanks. And until next time, don't forget Michigan still has 3 more calls, and those are the second Tuesday of the month. So next week, Tuesday at 7, join in with the Michigan group. And until then, take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.